It's another Friday, so let's answer some questions from the listeners in this edition of Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. We're on Odyssey and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you want to know a little bit more about me and this show, well, I am based here in Kansas City. I work over at Sports Radio 810 WHB, doing some hosting, co-hosting, and a little bit of producing as well. That's my day-to-day, though, because when it comes to this podcast, when you click on this link, it's Monday through Friday, 30-minute episodes of nothing but Royals baseball. And today's show is brought to you by Booking.com. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. And for those out there that are listening for the first time, I always say there is no better episode to jump in on than a Mailbag Friday, because it is completely dedicated to you, the listener. Any questions you may have about this team, about Major League Baseball, I will do my best to answer every single question, whether you send them to me on Twitter or you send them to me on the YouTube page. If they come in late or I miss them, I will always try to go back the next day and answer them just in the comment section. So let's get to question number one. This one comes from Supreme Ball Knower, and I even know with the little asterisks in there, the question's going to be, why isn't Sam Long the closer? And that goes back to that Cleveland series that I just knew that was going to be a bunch of questions in my mailbag of why Sam Long isn't closing. Look, to answer this honestly, James McArthur's been pretty good since the beginning of June. And I would love to see a spot in the future, if McArthur can't go, that Sam Long would get an opportunity. And honestly, I think I would go with Sam Long or Chris Bubic in a closer scenario. I don't think you need to put Schreiber out there. I don't think you need to put Will Smith out there. I'd go with the two guys that have some of the best stuff in the bullpen. That would be Bubic to me, and that would also be Sam Long. But right now, James McArthur is going to be this closer because he really seems to have picked up steam as of late. I didn't think he was fantastic in game one of the doubleheader against St. Louis, but thought he was really sharp in game two, and that's really hard to have back-to-back saves in one day against the same team on the road. Next question comes from Willie. He says, how much does momentum or lack thereof going into the All-Star break affect the team's morale in the second half? Can you think of any recent examples? I know that baseball is such a long season, and we try to put emphasis on momentum. It's great to have momentum going into the break, but the devil's advocate would say, well, then you don't play for an entire week. So any momentum you had, it kind of goes away. And then you turn the corner to a brand new second half, a new opponent, whether you're at home or you're on the road. The Royals will open up the second half against the White Sox at home. So I think it's great to have momentum, but it's more so about keeping the morale high going into the All-Star break. You really can kick back and feel good about where you're at, rather than feeling like, man, when we get back to work, we're going to have to be scrambling. We're going to be able to, put ourselves in a spot that is advantageous in the second half, but it's going to take an uphill battle. That's what I think the mentality would be if you limp into the second half. I remember last year, the Arizona Diamondbacks had a really bad second half. I mean, they were significantly limping, and Texas kind of the same as well. And yet both those teams ended up in the World Series. So that would be my two most recent examples for kind of having any momentum going into the break, or maybe not so much going into that long week off for everybody around Major League Baseball. Wild West Willie asks, is Isbell the only outfielder not in danger of being replaced? I don't think any of them are going to be replaced. Hunter Renfroe, if you take out April, has been a hitter that has posted an on-base percentage north of 360. He's been just fine. The Royals are not going to move Hunter Renfroe out of right field. MJ Melendez since June 7th has been what second half MJ Melendez was last year. He's, suddenly caught fire once again, and all three outfielders seem to be playing well. I don't think the Royals have any desire to move those guys out. What I'd imagine would happen if they acquired a bat, you can get creative with the DH spot. You don't have to pigeonhole somebody to one spot. You can rotate the outfielders, except for Isbell, of course, because he's so good defensively. But you could rotate the corner outfielders with the DH spot if you were to bring in a Tommy Pham, for example. I don't think anybody that would be in danger of getting replaced. So, no, Isbell's not the only guy that is safe. I think all three outfielders are safe at this point of the season. Tonal asks, 7 games back of Cleveland with a bunch of head-to-head. Bring on Cleveland. That can be the mentality, especially since you took 3 of 4 at Kauffman Stadium the last time out. Look, the AL Central is getting a little bit tight. I believe Minnesota now is just 4.5 games back at Cleveland with an entire second half to go. I said earlier, maybe a month or two ago, that it would take a catastrophic collapse by Cleveland. I don't think they've been, catastrophic. They just are starting to have the teams in their division gain some serious ground. And yeah, 7 games back, still a pretty healthy lead there, but it can evaporate in one bad week for Cleveland and one really good week for the Royals. Walk a Season asks, in a hypothetical scenario, if the Royals acquired Jazz Chisum, would he be the leadoff hitter? I feel like he would be a decent kick to the offense in front of Bobby, Vinny, and Salvi. If they did acquire Jazz Chisum, yes, I do think that he would be the leadoff hitter, and that way they can move Michael Garcia down to the 7 or the 8 hole. But if they go and put all their chips in, I know John Sherman mentioned today, or at least it was put out there on social media today, that he's willing to take on some payroll from guys they go out there and acquire. It sounds like they are going to be buyers, and maybe that means going after Jazz Chisum and putting some money into him. But if he does get acquired by the Royals, yes, I would expect him to be a leadoff hitter. Big Daddy asks, Rooker and Mason Miller for Mozzicato, Cross, and Lynch. Unfortunately, I hate to be the one to tell you that would not be enough to get both of those guys. Not even enough to get Brent Rooker, in my opinion. Mason Miller is going to take, I think, a couple of top 100s, and the Royals only have one in their organization. Somebody else out there might have the capital, but I also think Oakland's going to hang on to Mason Miller and try to build around him to form a really good bullpen going on for the next 2 to 3 years or so. Next one comes from Alex. Should ESPN interview Pete Alonso during Bobby Witt Jr.'s turn during the home run derby? Hell no, and I think we all will have a resounding hell no to that. That was such an embarrassment back in, 2022 for the home run derby, and it was at Coors Field. And yeah, Pete Alonso, he is a derby champ, a 2-time derby champ, I believe. And Salvador Perez is going nuts, going crazy in the derby. He didn't beat Alonso, but the whole time, all you could hear on ESPN was this interview they had of Pete Alonso instead of putting the focus on Salvador Perez, which I think a lot of people thought he deserved in a moment like that. So if that happens again, Royals fans have full permission to riot for something that would happen like that. All-Star Cole Reagan's Enjoyer asks, if the Royals take 2 out of 3 or even sweep this weekend, how do you think that affects the way the team will approach the trade deadline? I think at that point, they would be trying to acquire 2 or 3 guys to add to this second half push. That would put them, Boston won tonight, so that would put them in the lead by 2 games, for the final wild card spot. And then you got a really soft schedule coming out of the break. Yeah, I'd imagine in the next week or two, the Royals would go pretty heavy on the deadline and try to bolster their bullpen a little bit and maybe get a bat that's affordable to them. And the fact that John Sherman said he's willing to go a little bit above and beyond for that, possibilities have now opened up a little bit as the Royals will try to capitalize on, such a great first half that they found themselves in playoff contention. Last one we'll answer here for the first round of mailbag questions. This one comes from Reg, I believe it is. If I mispronounce it, I apologize. On the roster, who do you think are some options the Royals will look to trade to get what they need before the trade deadline? Relief pitching, or do they need to acquire some consistent hitters? I think they're going to go heavy on relief pitching. They might try to find a bat. As for guys they would trade, nobody at the major league level. They could try to trade somebody who's blocked, like a Drew Waters or a Nick Prado or maybe a Nelson Velasquez, CJ Alexander being another one. I just don't think the return would be as high as people may think it is. So for me, it would have to be one of their top 10 prospects, top 15 prospects to make a a serious move that would impact their bullpen. But I also think that it's more likely now than not that they are going to acquire an arm or two. Even Jim Bowden in his latest article on The Athletic said that he would be pretty shocked if the Royals didn't make a move or two to help out that bullpen. We'll take our first break of the show. When we come back, more and more questions on this Mailbag Friday. That's coming up on Locked On Royals. You are tuning in to Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can always find us on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to a few of the sponsors, starting with Booking.com. With summer travel heating up, especially for baseball games, it's time to explore those cities you've always secretly wanted to know more about. Yes, we're talking about your rivals' cities. With hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay even in your rival's city. I'll be going wheels up to Arlington here in a few days. I've mentioned that I've already traveled down there before. Really wanted to make it happen in St. Louis, but work got in the way. We'll be taking trips to San Francisco. Booking.com is where I'm going to go to make sure I'm completely covered, because from hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the country for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com on the site or on the Booking.com app. We also want to let you know about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Let's jump back onto Twitter to see what else people are asking around there. Mizzou Raw asks, is Asa Lacy the answer to our bullpen problems? I am detecting a little bit of sarcasm there, but if not, I'm not trying to poke fun or anything. But Asa Lacy's out for the year. That was reported back in spring training that I believe he was undergoing Tommy John surgery, so a full year recovery there. I'm just not sure at this point you can count on Asa Lacy to be much for the Royals organization. I hope he gets a chance somewhere at the professional level, but, in the future, I think it's just kind of if he gets there, he gets there. Very similar to Kyle Zimmer, where at one point you just go, he's not really a part of our future plans. If he gets there, that's just a great baseball story, great human story, and I still am holding out hope that Asa Lacy does get that opportunity. This one comes from Dupe. Would MJ Melendez hit water if he fell out of a boat? Well, we talked about this in one of the previous questions. He's been a lot better of late. Maybe not as good as Hunter Renfroe or the way Kyle Isbell looked in the month of June, but this is a much better version of MJ Melendez, and honestly, a version of MJ Melendez that can play every single day. Maybe Matt Quatrero doesn't give him that type of flexibility. Still, though, since June 7th, about a month now, a little over a month, he's been an above-average hitter, and I think for the Royals, that has been an absolute blessing for this lineup, just so that they don't have to worry about one or two guys carrying the offensive workload. Now you can get a little bit of production from the bottom part of your order. KC Sports Fan asks, how much would Kopech cost considering he just threw an immaculate inning on Wednesday? Yeah, that was really awesome to see, and he's got electric stuff. I'm not sure that the White Sox could leverage that as getting an extra prospect or two for one outing, because the reality is he's been really poor over the last month or so. So what I think he could cost, I mean, man, that is wipeout stuff that he has, but the numbers aren't really good. I think that you could compare it to what Scott Barlow got in return last year, which was Henry Williams, a top 15 pick in the Padres organization, and then a lottery ticket throw-in. Hopefully for the Royals, that could be the price for Michael Kopech if they decide to go for him, but you also bring up the the complexity of trading with a division rival. So maybe the White Sox would be asking just for a little bit more from a division rival like the Royals. This one comes from M. Cuker. I believe that's the way you pronounce it. Again, if I get these wrong, just correct me the next time around. What do you think about Ryan McMahon from the Rockies to play third and have a middle of the order bat? What would they have to give up for him, considering Arenado was sent out for a little bit more than a box of baseballs? Yeah, Colorado, I think, has always been bad at handling trades, but Ryan McMahon is a guy I think they're going to try to build around. I think that he's not even, going to be negotiated too much with other teams unless they're blown away by a deal. And that is what's going to hang up the Royals a lot. They just can't blow anybody away with a deal. So I like the thought. I just don't think the Royals are even looking in that direction. If I'm wrong, all the better. I would love to make a move like that where McMahon could play third and then, Michael Garcia could move around the infield a little bit more. Maybe, Michael Garcia moves to a bench spot because Michael Massey's been playing so well offensively. So that would be interesting. I just don't think the Royals are looking down that pathway for Ryan McMahon. Michael asks, probably an unpopular take, but how about a reunion with Jorge Lopez as the right-handed pitcher in the bullpen, 99-mile-per-hour fastball, plus a wicked changeup? I was surprised the Royals didn't try to give him a shot once he was put on waivers by the Mets following his post-game debacle or the miscommunication. It was a weird scenario. But, yeah, I still was kind of shocked because I felt like he could deserve a shot in this bullpen, and the Royals really liked him when he was there in Kansas City. So, yeah, I think that is still a name to keep an eye on, a former Royal there and a guy that, is in high regard with the organization. Maybe. I mean, if you're throwing 99 and you have a power changeup, like we saw for a number of years in Baltimore, maybe it could be a match down the road just to have that minor pickup for the bullpen. But, he just kind of feels like at this point he's bouncing around the league and maybe he doesn't have too much left in the tank. This one comes from RB Carr. Any last-minute draft news? Smith or Burns at 6 is still my guess. We had a segment about this yesterday or 2 days ago. I thought that Kurtz was going to be the guy that the Royals are going to go with. But then we saw a couple mocks come out today, and Fangraphs put out an article about their mock draft. If Hagen Smith is there, I think the Royals take Hagen Smith. If the board falls in a unique way and like Jack Caglione or somebody like JJ Weatherholt falls to 6, I think you go with that. But I just think that if the Royals have Hagen Smith available at 6, they're going to take him. And I've heard, some criticism of that, but folks, he's a lethal, dominant left-handed pitcher. He was one of the best pitchers in all of college baseball. He may be the first or second guy taken and of the pitching ranks there in the draft. So to me, I would have no issue. I think he's got power stuff. He's got 2 70-grade pitches. I don't think you can pass that up if he is there. So that's what I kind of think the Royals are leaning toward a little bit more. Now, also, Bryce Rayner could be a prep bat they go with. It sounds like the Royals really like him as well. Jackson asks, Bobby is at plus 700 to win the Derby last I checked. Do you like his chances to win it? I mean, he's been in the Derby before on national television. It was when he was 17 or 18 years old, and it was at the Nationals Park. So I think that it's worth a shot. That the field's not that impressive. I think you have some true home run guys like Adolis Garcia, Gunnar Henderson, but maybe Bobby can sneak in there. He's got to start strong, though. He can't, fall into a spot where he's only got like 5 or 6 home runs very early into his round. He's got to pop off relatively quickly because that's what unfortunately happened to Salvador Perez. Pete Alonso was just ridiculous in the round that he faced him. You got to start strong and then take your time out at the right time and then continue to be strong in the second half. But I think it's worth a couple bucks to throw down on the plus 700. I'm not going to call him an underdog by any means. I think he still could have a pretty good shot. Brian asks, is this series against Boston the biggest since 2017? I could say yes on that. I think there were a couple of series in 2017 when the Royals were holding a playoff spot or still chasing one that really mattered. This stacks up for me because if you can go in there and take 2 of 3, you go into the break with a playoff spot. If you get swept, all of a sudden you're 4 games back and maybe you're behind Houston at that point for, one of the teams on the outside looking in. So, there is a lot of pressure on this series, especially this late into the season. We're getting near game number 100. So, yeah, I think I'll agree there that this is the biggest series since 2017. Trying not to be a prisoner of the moment, but hey, that's what we like to do sometimes here on the Locked On Royals channel. We are going to take our final break, but before we do that, a shout out to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, news, and everything streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. When we come back, we'll wrap up our Mailbag Friday next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can always find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Want to give a shout out to a few more sponsors here, starting with Tax Network USA. Here on Locked On Royals, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It is year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years of experience and an A-plus rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. And be sure to mention us, Locked On Royals, at checkout, and you'll receive a $250 discount off of their services. Also want to let you know about Stitch Fix. Have you ever been worried about your wardrobe, what to wear for a big gathering or maybe a fancy dinner? Stitch Fix can take care of everything for you. A little bit of your own personal stylist, if you will. You can easily upgrade your wardrobe this year with that professional stylist that helps you find a new on-trend favorite that will work for you. When it comes to me, I just give my stylist my size, my style, and my budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription is going to be required. And they send 5 just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and pro style advice. And I keep what works and send back the rest. So with StitchFix.com, now's the best time to get started at StitchFix.com/MLB, because you can get $100 off. That's $25 off your first 4 fixes for a limited time only. That's StitchFix.com/MLB for $100 off. StitchFix.com/MLB. You must redeem within 7 days of sign up. The offers does not include kids fixes. Last couple questions here that we have on a Mailbag Friday. This one comes from Spark. Buyers, sellers, or sitters? I do not think they're going to be sellers. If they aren't going to do anything, I still believe they're going to add like a waiver wire pickup or a minor move that could help them in the latter parts of the second half. But I'm going to say right now, I think they're buyers. I think they're going to go out there and acquire at least 2 bullpen arms, and that might be able to help them in the long run. But to me, I would probably say right now they are going to be buyers. Next question comes from Jason. John Sherman said that he was open to taking on contracts for players so he could avoid trading too much of our farm system. What players, especially relievers and outfielders, would fit the bill on this? Yeah, I'd have to do a little bit more digging on that, of guys that have some team control. But yes, to your point, John Sherman would go after a guy that has team control. I mean, Taylor Ward has an extra year of control. Maybe he would take on a deal like that. Or if it's a bullpen arm out there that has 2 or 3 years of control, I think that John Sherman would take on something like that. Or a guy like Matt Chapman, I think he could fit that bill of a guy that's making some money. And if the Giants are going to be sellers, which they need to have a really good final series here, maybe a good next week before the deadline to ensure they're not sellers. But who knows? There's a couple of names there to watch, and I'll probably do more of a deep dive earlier next week. Blaze asks, what are realistic options out there in terms of trade for a leadoff hitter and relief pitcher? Any additional names to pay attention to since Sherman said they're willing to take on the payroll? Yeah, I'll throw Matt Chapman's name out there again. We've mentioned Tommy Pham before, Michael Kopech. Austin Adams, Lucas Ursig. You guys have heard me say some of those names before, but that's kind of who I think it comes down to here. The more affordable pieces, Dylan Floro of the Washington Nationals had a really good year. Kyle Finnegan, Hunter Harvey, some of those guys that have an extra year of control. Maybe the Royals would be willing to do a move like that, but we're still a couple of weeks away, and I think that somebody has to kind of get the ball rolling. Maybe it's the Royals, maybe it's not, but I do envision some moves being made here over the next week or two. This one comes from Joseph. How far does everyone think the power of friendship and good vibes can get us? I think we can get into a wild card and win a series, but actually it's nice to see MJ and Renfroe hitting well lately. Yeah, I definitely agree with that last part of it. And if the Royals do get into a playoff series, think about it. They've got three really good arms they can throw at somebody. They're going to have to face, Cole Reagan, Seth Lugo, and Michael Wacha, whoever they would be going up against, whether it be Seattle, Houston, the Yankees, Baltimore, Minnesota. It would be really tough to face a team like the Royals with that pitching staff. And all of the pressure should be on the team they're facing and not on the Royals. Josh asks, how aggressive should the Royals be in the trade market? I'm a little gun shy with how bare, though starting to improve, the farm system is. Seems like the market is really small this year, so prices may be high. Yeah, they're kind of high until the deadline happens, and then teams will start having to make moves because that's the misconception. We always think that buyers have to be desperate. Sellers do too. Imagine being a team that's not going anywhere and you're going to hang on to a guy that's going to be a free agent next year. No, they're going to eventually do that trade. So I think they can be aggressive. Well, like I said, I think the ball just needs to get rolling and the market will really start to heat up going over the next week or two. Casey, Preds fans ask, if the Royals do make the playoffs, which team would you not want to face in a wild card series? Probably Baltimore. I really do hope Baltimore wins the division so you wouldn't have to worry about them. They're a gauntlet, man. They are such a buzzsaw. That's the one team I would not want to see a playoff series. But again, I just would be fine with the Royals making the playoffs in general, so I don't care who would be thrown their way. I think it'd be fun regardless. This one comes from MIZ123fan16. I'll be there at Fenway. Great for you. Definitely send us a picture and we'll give you a retweet so that everybody can know that you are out there. But who do we need to stop on the Red Sox and who needs to perform for us in order to win the series? I think this is going to come down to bullpen. They're going to need, great outings from John Schreiber, from James MacArthur, from Angel Serpa, a couple guys there, because I believe there's going to be two games in this series that are decided by the bullpens late, and you've got to find a way to stop Rafael Devers. He is just a beast, and maybe they do rest him because he's been dealing with, what was it? I think a back injury or shoulder injury, something like that. He can hit a ball 450 feet on a pitch that is, 2-3 feet off the plate. It feels like he is just so hard to get out. He by far and away is the one that I am circling on that list. He gets hot, he takes over. You're not going to do that well in the series. Danny asks here, is the long-term plan for Bubic to transition back to a starter next year, or will, with Wright coming back, Kyle Wright, that is, your thoughts on keeping him in the back end of the bullpen if he proves himself? I think next year, Chris Bubic will get a shot in the rotation, but as for this year, he might be a high leverage guy, and I think that's just fine by the Royals. Michael S. looks like they will be one game back going in the series. Yep, since the Red Sox won tonight in emphatic fashion last night I said. I think I might have said tonight a couple of times. It's early morning episodes that I'm doing here, so I apologize if my brain's a little scrambled. But yes, I do think that game one's going to be vitally important because you don't want to be down 2 games with 2 games to go in Fenway. So game deficit for the Royals going into that series against the Red Sox. Ronnie asked, according to The Athletic, Royals are looking at J.J. Weatherholt, shortstop at number 6. Why another shortstop? We have the best in the biz. Yeah, I don't really worry about where guys are playing when they're drafted. They can always move around. It'd more so be about the bat and how it profiles to be, at the big league level. And J.J. Weatherholt is a guy I think is going to have a very successful big league career. Zach asks, hey, Jack, I've seen many articles ranking the City Connect uniforms for each team, and the y'alls always come in at the bottom. I might be biased, but I think KC's are my favorite because they're different enough without being over the top. Why do you think they get so much hate? The only thing I've heard about them is that they don't consider navy to be a Royals color. They'd much rather see powder blue worked in there more than it is in that uniform. I love them. I love the dark navy. We love the powder blues. We love the old school look, but it's a good color to have there mixed in with the white and the powder blue and a cool logo to go along with it. People are just hating too much, I guess, but everybody's got their reasons. But I by no means think the Royals have one of the worst City Connect uniforms. Jeff asks, barring a trade the next few days, how soon after draft is done do you expect a trade to happen? Does us winning or losing the series make a trade happen sooner than later? I don't think so. I'd imagine that we'll see in the next 2 weeks, max 2 weeks, probably under that, a trade to happen before the deadline, likely for a bullpen guy. So that's my guess. But no, it doesn't come down to what they do in the series against Boston. And lastly, Ben asks, what prospects other than Blake Mitchell do you think the Royals will deem untouchable for the trade deadline if they do buy? I think I'd say Gavin Cross for that. Blake Walters, another one there. And then maybe Caden Wallace. I think those would be the untouchables in the organization right now. But they could also have a longer list than I do. But to me, I think those seem like the most likely. Well, that is going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. You can always find us on wherever you get your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. We're on Odyssey and YouTube as well. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. One last shout out to Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on the free Fire TV channels app. Well, we're going to be off all weekend, of course, and next week is going to be a big one for us as we'll be down in Arlington for the All-Star game. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.